anything outside of, I think, 10 feet. But putt sets go into it's hard winds to read.
Florida dawn stretches softly across dew-drenched grass, the air thick with moisture, and the scent of freshly cut fairways, as a lone figure stands at the edge of the course, unmoving, a golf club resting in trembling hands. He is 62 years old now, back slightly hunched, knees swollen from decades of punishment, breath shallow and measured as he squints into the rising sun. There are no cameras here, no applause, no crowds murmuring his name, only the hush of morning broken by the sharp crack of a swing echoing across the empty course. The ball lifts briefly into the pale sky, then drops, rolling slowly through the wet grass until it disappears from view. That man is Vijay Singh, once one of the most dominant forces golf had ever seen, now practicing not for trophies or rankings, but simply to remind himself that he is still alive, still standing, still who he has always been. The weight of a legendary past. For nearly 2 decades, Vijay Singh represented something rare in professional golf. Relentless discipline forged not by privilege but by necessity. Born in Fiji, a nation better known for rugby and beaches than championship fairways, he rose from anonymity to claim 3 major championships: the 1998 PGA Championship, the 2000 Masters, and the 2004 PGA Championship, alongside 34 PGA Tour victories that eventually earned him induction into the World Golf Hall of Fame. In 2004, he accomplished what few thought possible, surpassing Tiger Woods to become the world's #1 golfer, not through charisma or commercial appeal, but through a grinding, uncompromising work ethic. Singh was not flashy, nor particularly embraced by the sport's cultural inner circle, but his swing became a quiet rebellion, proof that a man from a poor island nation, without connections or lineage, could rise to the top of a system never designed with him in mind, if he was willing to outwork everyone in it. A childhood forged in silence. Long before trophies and rankings defined his name, Vijay Singh grew up in a modest seaside home where the sound of rain on a rusted tin roof often replaced conversation. His father, Mohan Singh, worked as a mechanic and served as a golf coach at a local club, a stern man whose hands were permanently marked by grease and labor, and whose praise was scarce by design. His mother moved quietly through the house, folding worn clothes and tending to daily necessities, while young Vijay sat nearby under the faint glow of an oil lamp, carving makeshift golf club handles from scraps of wood. In that home, affection was practical rather than verbal. Encouragement was implied through expectations, not spoken through words. "I'm proud of you" was never said aloud, but discipline, routine, and responsibility shaped Vijay from an early age, teaching him that approval was earned through effort, not emotion. Golf beyond the fence. In Fiji, golf was not meant for boys like Vijay Singh. It was a game reserved for wealthy tourists and colonial elites, men in crisp shirts and polished shoes who laughed freely on manicured greens, while local children watched from behind fences. Real golf balls were far too expensive for his family, so Vijay practiced with whatever he could find: coconuts, stones, fallen fruit, anything that could roll or fly when struck. Barefoot on sandy lots behind his house, blistered and sunburned, he swung clubs carved from broomsticks, imagining fairways he had only glimpsed from afar. He dreamed of places like Augusta National, mythical landscapes that seemed impossibly distant from his reality. Each clean strike, no matter how crude the equipment, reinforced a belief that no one else around him shared, that one day he would stand where he was told he never belonged. Learning to endure disrespect. When Mohan Singh coached wealthy golfers at the local club, they addressed him politely, even deferentially, but their tone changed when they noticed Vijay trailing behind. Some smirked, others joked casually that the boy might grow up to be a caddy one day. assuming that was the highest place he could reach. Vijay never responded. He learned early that silence was safer than confrontation, gripping his club until his knuckles turned white, storing humiliation rather than releasing it. At night, after the course closed, he slipped through fences to collect abandoned golf balls from the rough, practicing in near darkness, guided only by feel and repetition. Rain soaked his clothes, mud clung to his feet. But he kept swinging each strike, becoming a quiet promise to himself that one day the world would know his name, even if it refused to acknowledge him now. The first crushing setback. In 1985 at the Indonesian Open, just as Vijay Singh, Vijay Singh's professional career was beginning to take shape, it suffered a devastating interruption. He was accused of a scorecard irregularity, an allegation that spread rapidly through headlines and whispers, without the benefit of a thorough or transparent hearing. The resulting ban from the Asian Tour effectively erased him from professional golf overnight. In a sport where reputation is everything, doors closed immediately, friends distanced themselves, sponsors vanished, and opportunities evaporated. At just 22 years old, Vijay learned how quickly admiration could turn into silence. He packed his clubs without ceremony and left without farewells, carrying not only his equipment, but the weight of public doubt that would follow him for years. It was a moment that could have ended his career entirely, but instead, it marked the beginning of a far longer and lonelier climb, back into the game he refused to abandon. Exile and quiet survival. With no professional tour willing to offer him a path forward, Vijay Singh drifted into a quiet exile, accepting work as a golf instructor at a Malaysian resort, a place of manicured greens and wealthy guests who had little idea the man adjusting their grip once stood on the brink of greatness. By day, he taught fundamentals with restraint and humility, offering advice with the calm precision of someone who knew the game deeply but spoke little about himself. By night, he returned to a cramped dormitory room where the ceiling leaked during heavy rains, the sound of water striking metal echoing through the darkness, like a reminder of how far he had fallen. He cleaned and polished his clubs obsessively, staring at his reflection in the steel, a face hardened not by age, but by disappointment and unanswered questions. In moments when the rain grew so loud it swallowed thought itself, he wondered whether all the sacrifices, all the hours, all the belief he carried as a boy had been for nothing. And yet, even then, when no one was watching and nothing was promised, he went out into the downpour to practice alone, swinging again and again, not for recognition or applause, but simply to survive another day, as the man he believed himself to be. Rebuilding. From the bottom years, passed before Vijay found even the smallest opening back into competitive golf, beginning again where few cared to look, on lesser-known European tours, where prize money was scarce and comfort non-existent. He traveled between countries by train, slept in cheap hotels with thin walls and colder nights, and lived on instant noodles and simple meals that filled his stomach but offered no comfort. Mornings began before sunrise on fog-covered practice ranges, shoes soaked through, fingers stiff and often bleeding, as he repeated the same swing hundreds of times, chasing precision with a discipline that bordered on obsession. Other players noticed his relentless routine and whispered about his work ethic, calling him tireless, even extreme. But to Vijay, this was not dedication born of ambition. It was necessity born of fear. Golf was not a career he could step away from. It was his identity, the only language through which he understood his worth. Without it, his life felt hollow and undefined. Progress came slowly, almost invisibly, measured not in headlines but in small paychecks, improved finishes, and the quiet knowledge that he was no longer disappearing. One tournament at a time, one round at a time, he rebuilt himself from the ground up. Redemption without celebration? In 1998, Vijay Singh returned to golf's grandest stage by winning the PGA Championship in the United States. A moment that should have overflowed with joy, but instead arrived heavy with memory and restraint. As the crowd roared and cameras flashed, he did not leap or shout. He simply looked upward, eyes calm but distant, as though acknowledging the long years of silence, exile, and rejection that had shaped this victory. 2 years later, he stood at Augusta National and slipped on the Masters green jacket, becoming champion on ground that had once symbolized exclusion, not just by tradition, but by history itself. It was a quiet, powerful challenge to golf's unspoken boundaries, delivered without speeches or protest, only performance. The applause was thunderous, yet inside him the scars of being cast out, never fully healed. Redemption had arrived, but celebration felt foreign, almost undeserved, as if joy itself was something he had learned to live without. Success and isolation. Despite dominating professional golf in the early 2000s and rising to world number one in 2004, Vijay Singh remained an outsider in the culture surrounding the sport. The media praised his results, but often described him as cold, robotic, or emotionless, failing to understand that what they saw was emotional armor, forged over decades of doubt and judgment. While other players bonded easily, sharing dinners and laughter, Vijay often ate alone in hotel rooms, practicing late into the night, while others rested or celebrated. He carried a constant, quiet fear that one mistake could erase everything again, that success was temporary and acceptance conditional. Victory brought wealth and recognition, but it did not bring belonging, and the higher he climbed, the more isolated he felt. His life became a cycle of performance and protection, winning not for joy but to defend his place in a world he still did not fully trust. The cost paid at home, behind the trophies and rankings, a quieter cost was being paid at home by those who loved him most. His wife, Ardina, waited through long absences as dinners grew cold and days passed without certainty of his return, while their son watched his father move in and out of the house, like a distant figure, always on the verge of leaving again. Vijay loved his family deeply, but presence came at a price he did not know how to afford. Trapped in a cycle where stopping felt more dangerous than exhaustion. His sense of identity was so tightly bound to performance that rest felt like disappearance, as though slowing down might erase everything he had fought to rebuild. The silence he learned in childhood followed him into adulthood, shaping both his resilience and the emotional distance that grew between him and the people waiting at home. A new storm in later years. In 2013, when Vijay believed the harshest chapters of his career were finally behind him, a new storm emerged, reigniting old doubts with painful familiarity. Reports surfaced regarding a supplement he had used without understanding its implications. And before any investigation concluded, judgment arrived swiftly and publicly. Headlines spread, commentary escalated, and perception once again raced ahead of truth. Though no violation was ultimately proven, the damage was immediate, reopening wounds that had never fully closed, and reinforcing how fragile reputation can be in public life. Sponsors withdrew, whispers returned, and once again his name became a subject of debate rather than achievement, reminding him how quickly redemption could be questioned and how conditional acceptance had always been. Fighting for dignity. Refusing to retreat into silence, Vijay chose to fight not for money or revenge, but for dignity, pursuing legal action to challenge how his name had been publicly damaged. The process stretched on for years, slow and exhausting, driven by a need to defend the honor he had spent a lifetime rebuilding. When the matter finally concluded, confirming no wrongdoing, the resolution arrived quietly, without apology or acknowledgement, buried beneath newer stories and younger champions. The world had already moved on, leaving Vijay to confront a truth he had learned many times before. Vindication rarely travels as loudly or as far as accusation, and dignity often must be claimed, not granted. The battle with his own body. As public controversies faded, a more personal and relentless battle intensified within his own body. Decades of extreme training and repetition had taken their toll, leaving his knees damaged, his back weakened, and his joints inflamed, forcing surgeries and long, painful rehabilitation. Doctors warned him repeatedly to stop, to preserve what remained, but to Vijay, quitting felt like erasing himself entirely. Physical therapy replaced tournament preparation as his daily discipline. Pain becoming a constant companion. He learned to manage rather than escape. Each morning he returned to the range, no longer measuring success in trophies or rankings, but in days he could still swing a club without collapsing. His body had become a battlefield, but surrender was never an option he recognized. Golf as identity, not competition. By his early 60s, Vijay Singh no longer chased leaderboards or records, practicing instead to stay connected to himself. On quiet Florida mornings, he hit balls alone, moving carefully, breathing through discomfort, finding peace not in distance or accuracy, but in the simple act of contact between club and ball. Each swing carried memory rather than ambition. A reminder that while time had taken his speed and strength, it had not taken his resolve. Golf was no longer something he did to prove himself to others. It was how he remained present in his own life. How he remembered who he was beyond headlines and judgments. A quiet legacy. Today his home is modest and unassuming, filled more with memories than luxury, trophies tucked away in a small box rather than displayed proudly. Old photographs line the walls, and his son's childhood drawing still hangs nearby, depicting a man standing alone on a course, back bent but unbroken. When Vijay reads letters from fans who found inspiration in seeing someone who looked like them succeed, his throat tightens with emotion, understanding that perhaps this impact, quiet and unseen, matters more than any statistic or title. In those moments, he recognizes that legacy is not always loud, and influence does not require constant recognition.